Ay, magandang gabi ho sa inyong lahat. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Uh, Happy Thanksgiving. Siguro ho, dito po bukas sa Amerika, we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving tomorrow. So for those who are in the Philippines and Australia, would like to just greet you also, Happy Thanksgiving. Not only because the Bible talks about it, but because later I'll be talking more about the importance of at least being grateful and being thankful ho. Because we began a series last Wednesday with Pastor Edwin Arceliana. Nakalimut na, inaantok pa ho ako. Pasensya na ho kayo, jet lag. We began our new series ho, Gratitude Matters with Pastor Edwin. And he used Psalm 34 last Wednesday. And he basically talked about the importance of learning to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. It is not something that we feel. Because normally what happens is, if we don't practice this attitude of gratitude, we'll always find ourselves probably complaining or comparing. Nowadays, we not only because we visit, for example, a house of a friend or relative that we see what they have and what we don't have, dito ho, sobrang social media. You just open your social media account, your Facebook account, your IG account, and suddenly you would see the houses they have, okay, the places they visit, the restaurants they go to, the food they eat, and after some time, ang comment na lang ho kadalasan natin, sana all. And when we don't practice this attitude of gratitude and wait for our feelings to come, for us to be thankful and grateful, it will not just happen. The reason the Bible talks about it. For example, in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, St. Paul himself, and this is what he said, be thankful in all circumstances. St. Paul did not say, be thankful for all circumstances. St. Paul was saying we have to be thankful and be grateful in all circumstances, whether good or bad, and what Pastor Edwin was saying last Wednesday. It doesn't matter what happens in our lives, whether good or bad, we become grateful and thankful simply because God is good. And again, St. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, he said, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. If you want to know God's will, kung gusto nating malaman po ang kalooban ng Panginoong Diyos, and one of the things that the Bible talks about, if you want to know God's will for your life, this is the first thing we should remember. We have to be thankful in all circumstances. If not, we would always find ourselves complaining, as I've said earlier, or comparing what we have with what other people have. Kumbaga, meron ho tayong comparison lagi. We'd always find ourselves complaining, okay, and that's medyo nakakatakot ho yun. St. Paul said we have to be grateful not only because the Bible talks about it, but because he sees most likely the tendency of every human being to complain. By nature, we are not grateful. Siguro ho, kayong may mga anak po at may mga pamilya ho, you would always find yourself correcting or teaching your kids. Okay, when somebody gives him a gift, pag may binigay na regalo, pag may binigay na pagkain ho, what do you always say? Anak, okay, what would you say? Thank you. And we always want to teach our kids to be grateful and to be thankful when somebody gives them something. And I guess that is not something that we are born with as human beings. We're sinful human beings, and that's why St. Paul was basically teaching us, commanding us to be thankful in all circumstances. It was the late evangelist Billy Graham who was once quoted. Sabi niya, grumbling and gratitude are for the child of God in conflict. Yan, medyo nagigising na yung utak ko. Okay? Because I've been sleeping around 6 in the evening here, so kaya kanina parang tulog ho yung utak ko. It was Billy Graham who said, grumbling and gratitude are for the child of God in conflict. He said, be grateful, and look at this, and you won't grumble. It's either you begin thanking God, you begin being grateful, and then you are not grumbling and complaining. Because if you don't practice it, it doesn't become an attitude of your life. It doesn't become a lifestyle. Eventually, you'll find yourself complaining and grumbling. That's why Billy Graham said, be grateful and you won't grumble. Grumble and you won't be grateful. I mean, I began with St. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, but you look at many books, and Pastor Edwin began talking about the book that recently we have been reading, The Gratitude Project. And even science would actually explain, okay, why gratitude matters. Allow me to just mention a few. From the book Gratitude Project, how the science of thankfulness can rewire our brains for resilience, optimism, and the greater good. The author said, researchers have found that gratitude contributes powerfully to human health. It means you live longer. It's not only exercise. It's not only sleep. It's not only, okay, healthy diet. It's not only what? Supplementation. Research would say what contributes powerfully to us as human beings, okay, is when we become grateful. We live longer. Not only that, it contributes powerfully to happiness and even social connection. What does it mean? Between husband and wife. If the husband, okay, practices gratitude, ako na yun actually. If the wife practices gratitude, they would say, research would say, it helps actually the relationship between husband and wife. Between parents and children. If only our children would learn to appreciate and be grateful and be thankful for the parents are doing for them. I guess it would help the connection between parents and children. To continue, in research by Robert Emmons, an American psychologist, and Sonia, I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it right, Lyubomirsky, a Russian-born but professor of psychology, and many other scientists would say practicing gratitude has proven to be one of the most reliable methods for increasing happiness and life satisfaction. It also boosts feelings of optimism, joy, pleasure, enthusiasm, and other positive emotions. Let me add one more. From Dr. Mark Hyman, who wrote an article on why gratitude is so beneficial. Dr. Hyman said, scientifically speaking, the answer is what? Is dopamine. If you want to feel good, okay? He said, we need to be grateful. Whenever you express, etong maganda, not only you express, but someone who receives it. Whenever you express or receive gratitude, you get a hit of dopamine along with it. And then he added, for one, gratitude has been shown to contribute to positive mental health outcomes. And even one study showed expressing gratitude helped symptoms of depression and anxiety. Another found that being grateful was linked to improved moods. And one study from 2007 even found a link between gratitude and lower risk of heart failure. These are just some of the research from the books that would talk about, okay, why gratitude matters. But for tonight and for today, allow me to just bring you to the book of Luke chapter 17 about the story of the 10 lepers. The story of the 10 lepers is very unique in the book of Luke. Matthew, John, and Mark, they did not mention about the story. So you will find the story of the 10 lepers only in the book of Luke in chapter 17. Allow me to read from verse 11. Luke said, now on his way to Jerusalem, he was talking about Jesus, and he was on his way to Jerusalem, his last visit before his crucifixion, that Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Allow me to show you the map. The top is the Galilee, okay, in between is Samaria, and at the bottom was Judea. And Jesus was coming from Galilee, and he was crossing Samaria. And the Bible in chapter 17, the book of Luke, was talking about Jesus who was traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he was going into a village, okay, the Bible didn't mention the name of the village. It only says a village. 10 men who had leprosy met Jesus Christ. They stood at a distance. I was doing a research on how far should a leper stay away from people who are not yet contaminated or who are not who doesn't have leprosy. They have to be at least 16 feet away from other people, basically shouting, unclean, unclean, unclean. Some would even say they need to ring a bell to basically announce that they are there. Unclean, unclean. So they were standing at a distance around 16 feet away, and they called out in a loud voice. Anong sabi ho ng 10? Jesus, Master. Imagine how these 10 lepers calling Jesus Master, which is the name, okay, being used by those who are his disciples. And these people, the 10 lepers that we were talking about, are not believers yet. They saw Jesus, probably they've been hearing about the miracles that Jesus was performing. One particularly in Luke chapter 5, where Jesus was able to heal a man with leprosy. The difference here is that in Luke chapter 5, okay, what Jesus did was to touch the leper. Okay, and automatically, the leper in chapter 5, the book of Luke, was healed. But this time, they were shouting to Jesus, asking for help. And they said, Jesus, Master. Anong sabi ho nila? Have pity on us. Sa ibang version po ng Bible, have mercy on us. They were not asking yet, okay, for healing. They were just simply asking Jesus to be merciful, to be pitiful, because there's no way during the time for a person with leprosy, okay, to be healed. No doctors will be able to heal them, only through the power and miracles performed by Jesus Christ. So they were calling upon Jesus in a loud voice, and they said, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And look at this. When he saw these 10 lepers, he said, go, show yourselves to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. I've mentioned about Luke chapter 5. The protocol was this. Jesus was not supposed to touch a person with leprosy. And he even said in Luke chapter 5, I don't have time to just go there. If you would, personally, if you want to go there, Luke chapter 5, he even told the man who was healed of leprosy not to tell anyone. But this time, instead of healing them and touching them, Jesus followed the law. In Leviticus 13 and 14, he just told these 10 men, go, show yourselves to the priest, and as they went, they were cleansed. Eto ho, mamaya explain ko ho yan. Imagine, they did not even ask Jesus, Jesus, you want us to go to the priest, and yet you have not yet healed us. The truth is, at least in this verse, you would see that these 10 lepers obeyed Jesus immediately, and as they went rather, they were cleansed, and they were healed. To continue, in verse 15, and one of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back. Imagine 1 out of 10. Jesus saw this man because he came back. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back praising God in a what? In a loud voice. In verse 16, he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Verse 17, basahin ko muna ho lahat. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? I mean, he did not ask them to come back to him, okay, and to be thankful and to be grateful. And yet Jesus was making a big issue out of this. And he was saying, asan yung 10? I mean, asan yung 9? Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? He was a Samaritan. And he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. Imagine during the time, okay, a lot of people with leprosy, okay, would actually stay away from a lot of people. They have a place, a colony where they would stay far away from other people, especially their families, their communities, their churches. Leprosy is a common topic in the Bible. Actually, it was mentioned 68 times in the Bible, 58 times in the Old Testament, and 13 times in the New Testament. I'm talking about this because, I don't know if any one of you has seen someone who has leprosy. May nakakita na ho dito inside the room because I have never met someone with leprosy. Sa atin po mga nanonood po, nakalagin po, have you seen anyone with leprosy? Because I haven't met anyone. As far as I know, when I was in the Philippines, they would talk about Palawan. Tama ho ba yan, Sister Sylvia? Palawan, Colyon, a colony of lepers in Palawan during the American Commonwealth. But during the time, of Jesus, leprosy was so common also. And the first mention of the one who had leprosy was Miriam. Ang pangalan ho nung unang nagka-leprosy po sa Bible, ang pangalan Miriam po, asawa po ni Josh. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Miriam, the sister of Moses. Okay, yun po yung una. Pag binasa po ang Numbers 12, you will find Miriam with leprosy. But eventually, she was healed. But another person po, that was mentioned in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, who had leprosy, was King Naaman, a Syrian king, in 2 Kings chapter 5. So leprosy was something that was so debilitating. Nakakatakot ho yan. It's a deadly disease during the time of Jesus Christ. According to Josephus, lepers were treated as if they were in effect dead men. Wala nang pag-asa yan eh. Because there was no cure yet during the time. And the only way they will be cured of leprosy, although the protocol would say in Leviticus 13:14, if they got healed, they need to go to the priest. Why? To diagnose if you have leprosy. Then eventually, if you have been treated, of your leprosy, you will be given, at least a certification that you can now go back to your family and join your community. But during the time, the only way people with leprosy can become healed is through the miracles of Jesus Christ. So today, it is now called the Hansen's disease. Saan ho galing yan? Hansen's disease after the Norwegian scientists who discovered the cause of leprosy in this kind of bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae in 1873. But of course, the cure was discovered 100 years later in 1981. Isipin niyo ho yun. 1981 na-discover yung cure for leprosy. From the time of Jesus Christ, Luke chapter 17, they say approximately 3,500 years before they were able to discover the treatment for leprosy. And today, if you, get leprosy, you can go to a doctor for physical exam. They will perform a biopsy, and they will remove a small piece of skin or nerve and send it to a laboratory for testing. And during that time, you know this, leprosy is highly contagious and transmitted. Kumbaga sa atin di ba kinatatakutan natin 2 years ago, a year ago, is COVID. And during the time of Jesus Christ, it was highly contagious, transmitted generally by direct person-to-person contact. Usually, it has to be repeated contact with an untreated leper over a prolonged period of time. And they would say it occurs when a person with Hansen's disease sneezes, or coughs. You can be infected with this bacteria and the symptoms do not emerge for another 4 to 8 years. Ganun katagal ang incubation. The main physical symptoms of Hansen's disease or leprosy include muscle weakness, numbness in the hands, the arms, the feet, and the legs, and skin rash. Imagine po if you were a person with leprosy during the time. The physical pain that you have to go through, experience. But the most difficult was this, the emotional pain because of isolation. Because the law prescribed that the person with leprosy should be cut off from society, including his family. You have to automatically leave your family because you might infect them. You have to join a group of lepers, a colony. You cannot go to work. You cannot go to worship. You are considered a societal outcast. There's the reason how these 10 men who went to Jesus, when they heard probably about what Jesus was doing, and he was performing miracles, and then when they saw Jesus Christ, they were just saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. They knew Jesus can heal them. But then going back to the text, in Luke chapter 17, we found that Jesus, instead of healing them automatically, the instruction of Jesus was this: go to the priest. Why? They need to go to the priest for 3 reasons. To affirm God's commands in Leviticus 13:14, because during that day, the priests are considered the health department. Again, to diagnose if someone has leprosy and to declare if they are clean or healed. Yun po yung protocol ng panahon yun. But the second reason probably because why Jesus was telling them to go to the priest. Why? Because to testify to the priest that Jesus is God. Because nobody has ever been healed during the time. And when they go to, probably when they arrive there, they approach the priest and they would ask, paano kayo gumaling? And of course, they will be talking about Jesus Christ. And they will be testifying of their experience with Jesus Christ, because it was Jesus who healed them. Kung chapter 5 po ng Luke, the guy who was healed, touched, and he was healed, he commanded him not to talk about it this time. He told them to go to the priest. It was okay for them to talk about the experience. But of course, number 3, why did Jesus tell them to go to the priest? To test the faith of the lepers. Imagine as they were, walking towards the priest, they became healed. But what I would like to emphasize tonight and today is this, because we're celebrating Thanksgiving Day tomorrow here in America. But what is important, I want to at least emphasize is verses 15 and following. Because after experiencing healing, 10 of them, when they were walking towards the priest, the area where the priest was, imagine they were healed. And in verse 15, one of them, when he saw that he was healed, I want to take note of the word saw. The word aido. It means, this man took time to pause and to recognize that there's something happened to him. Huminto ho siya eh. Because if you would see here, the other 9, most likely what they did was to go immediately upon receiving healing and upon clearance from the priest. Yung excitement, magaling na kami. This time, we'll be able to spend time with our family, eat dinner perhaps, go to church or temple during the time, and become part of the society again, the community again. They were so excited, and that's understandable, but Jesus mentioned about the one guy. And the Bible said one of them, when he saw, he stopped, he paused, he recognized, he perceived that he was healed. What did he do? He came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. And again in verse 17. Ano sabi ni Jesus? We're not all 10 cleansed. 10 yung gumaling eh. And then Jesus said, where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. I know I was studying this and somehow I was meditating upon this and suddenly I became interested because Jesus suddenly was so concerned about the other 9. When he saw there was only one guy who went back to thank him, to acknowledge him. And I guess a lot of us, when we help someone, siguro ang application ho nito ganito eh. It bothers us when we help someone and that person doesn't even say thank you. Have you experienced it? Yung meron kang tinulungan po, you have done something good, okay, for this person. And yet this person doesn't even come back or go back and say thank you. Ang issue ni Jesus Christ nung panahon yun, and there was ingratitude because of the 9 who did not come back. And again in verse 15, the Bible said, one of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back. The word "aido," it means to know, to see, or perceive. At importante ho yun siguro. We have the time to pause for a while. And not only us for here in America because we have Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. But for us, whether in the Philippines or in Australia, okay, even outside America. Kadalasan ho, we easily forget what the Lord has done. We easily forget what others have done. Kasama natin kasi sa bahay. Our parents. How many of us would take time to even thank our parents for their sacrifices? Mga taga-Pilipinas, how many of us would take time to even thank, okay, your children who are working abroad or your parents who are working abroad? They've been sending money or balikbayan boxes every time they would visit home Manila or Philippines. How many of us will really take time to say, Mami, salamat sa sakripisyo mo. Imagine Jesus, who did not even require them to come back and say thank you. But because when he saw that another man, just one man out of 10, the 9 missed the opportunity to come back and to say thank you, Jesus Christ. What it would make a man, a Samaritan, to come back, to go back to Jesus and say thank you was this. The word "aido." He saw. He knew something happened. He perceived. He took the time to know that he has been blessed. And he had realized that something wonderful had happened to him. He was sensitive to the power of Christ's work in his life. His perception had entirely changed. Sometimes I would say most likely Jesus in chapter 17, when he was looking for the other 9, was kind of surprised and disappointed that these 9 lepers who got healed did not come back. Again, probably were excited to go back. They have missed their family, their kids. And most likely were saying, Jesus understands. Jesus probably can, alam niya nilalaman ng puso ko. Alam mo naman yun eh. I don't need to say it. But what's so tragic for these 9 lepers who was healed by Jesus Christ is that they forgot that without Jesus Christ, their time with their families, okay, their ability to be able to go back to their work or church or temple during the time was because of Jesus Christ. Nakalimutan ho nila. And Jesus was making an obvious observation that something was missing. May kulang dito eh. And I guess tayo ho yun, pag may ginawa ho ang ibang tao, pag may ginawa ho tayo sa ibang tao, di ba? I mean, you're actually looking for someone to at least say thank you. Masakit ho yun. It feels like a rejection and what you've done doesn't matter. Yun ho ang pakiramdam ho na isang tao hong nakatulong. I mean, Jesus is Jesus Christ, and yet in chapter 17, he made an issue of these 9 lepers who missed the opportunity to return. They all had faith to believe that Jesus will heal them. But only one was faithful to come back and say, Jesus, maraming salamat. So Jesus was making an obvious observation that something was missing. That someone or someones were missing. Because the other 9 had missed the moment and they had missed the opportunity. But only one was faithful enough to come back and say, thank you, Jesus. And when you talk about ingratitude, alam mo sa Tagalog noon, di ba ho, walang utang na loob? Tama ho ba yon? Walang utang na loob. And for us here who are listening now, I guess it bothers us. And tamang-tama ho, Thanksgiving week. Tamang-tama, we have a series on gratitude that matters. It's not only giving thanks to God, mas madali na ho yun. Lord, salamat po sa'yo. But ang pinakamahirap po is to acknowledge, okay, the people around us who had helped us in our journey moving forward. And where you are at now, what you have achieved, what you have basically, materially, lahat ng yan, may mga tao nakatulong ho sa atin eh. And the reason sometimes parents would just talk about, okay, the pain they have when their kids do not even recognize. Kasi pakiramdam ho ng mga anak ho nila, pinanganak mo kami. I mean, hindi namin pinili na ipanganak mo kami. It's your responsibility to provide for us, to at least bring us, to send us to school and provide financially. And minsan ho, alam mo yun, pakiramdam ng magulang ho, we're taken for granted. And even kids, okay, sometimes they would feel the same thing. Na taken for granted po sila. And it bothers us when we do something nice to someone and they don't even recognize what you've done and even say thank you. Importante ho yun because Jesus even mentioned about the 9 who missed the opportunity. Tayo ho, between husband and wife, ako, basically, I would say hindi ako expressive. Ako yung tipong, siguro, hindi ko naman pwede sisihin ng mga magulang ko because I was not taught. Okay? Like today, we would teach our kids. At least si Bethany, si Maharlika would always say, dapat marunong ka magpasalamat. When somebody gives you something, say thank you. But ako hindi ako expressive. Tanungin yung asawa ko. Ako to say thank you, okay, malaking bagay na ho yun. I have to admit and to be honest with you. Okay? Para magpasalamat sa asawa ko. Pinagluto mo ko. And the Book Gratitude Project would say, the research would suggest that men are worse than women when it comes to being grateful. Yun hong masakit doon. Yung research would say, tayong mga lalaki are worse than women. Hindi ako nagsabi noon, yung libro ho yun. Okay? When it comes to being grateful. Tama ho ba yun? And kadalasan po, yung away ng mga asawa, it's not because the woman is earning more, okay, than the man. Ito ho yung libro, sabi na naman, the Gratitude Project. A sociologist, Arlie, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, and others have argued, a successful relationship depends not just on how partners divide labor, but also how they each express gratitude for the labor the other one contributes. Mas madaling maangis daw ang relasyon ng mag-asawa kung paano magpasalamat daw ang isa sa kanila. Or both of them. In our research, we set out to test this theory. That it's not just the division of labor, but also the expression of gratitude that's key to a strong and lasting relationship. Between couples, husband and wife, between parents and kids, okay? And even in the church, for us to acknowledge the people, the volunteers, for their part, not simply because, okay, they're employees and we pay them, but to take time to actually acknowledge their contribution, their sacrifices, their labor. Sabi nga ni Warren Wesley po, when he was talking about the word ingratitude, too often we are content to enjoy the gift and we forget the giver. That we are quick to pray but slow to praise. Hindi lang po yan vertical but horizontal. It's so easy for us to ask for help but to go back and to say maraming salamat sa ginagawa mo. It was Andy Stanley, he talked about the topic of being thankful. And one of the things that he said was this. He said, ingratitude communicates, I don't see you. I don't recognize what you have done. I don't recognize your efforts and sacrifices. Yun daw ang ibig sabihin nun eh. And as you go back to Luke chapter 17, I have just 3 main points to just share with you tonight or today. Which I said earlier, number 1, to see it, to stop and to pause. Some books would even suggest to get a journal, okay, and to be able to write down the things that you are thankful for. We need to stop for a while. And to acknowledge, ano bang nagawa ng asawa ko sa akin? Minsan pag tinanong ng mag-asawa, isulat mo nga the top 10 na ayaw mo sa asawa mo. Kadalasan mas mabilis daw tayong sumulat ng mga ayaw natin sa ating asawa. Pag sinabihan daw yung asawa, magbigay ka ng mga bagay na maganda about sa iyong asawa. Naku, pakirap pa magsulat yan. I mean, we've tried it many times in the past when we have couples group, okay? And I guess one of the things that we can learn from Luke chapter 17 was this. Because the other guy, the only man, a Samaritan who was an outcast, doble ho. You're not only an outcast because you have leprosy, but you are also an outcast because you are a Samaritan. I mean, you are basically half-breed. It's a marriage between a Gentile and a Jew. Kumbaga, hindi ka genuine. Hindi ka namin kalahi. And Jesus mentioned that the guy who came back was a Samaritan. And what's so good about this man was that he saw what happened to him. He paused. He stopped and acknowledged what Jesus had done. And siguro maganda ho siguro sa atin ho ngayon, even right after ho the service tonight or today, is to stop for a while. Lalo sa atin sa Pilipinas, ang aga ho ng Pasko. I mean, we're back to normal, we're busy, sa dami ng mga parties na pupuntahan ho natin, and kadalasan we forget the one celebrating Christmas. I mean, we're busy with the many things we're supposed to do. We buy gifts, we decorate our houses, we attend parties that we forget to acknowledge, the reason I am who I am today, and the reason I have this house, this car, okay, this career, this business, because Jesus was the giver of all gifts. And number one we need to do is to be able to acknowledge by stopping and pausing for a while, because that man, the only man who went back to Jesus Christ, saw that he was healed. But the second thing is this. We need to say it. Because in verse 15 in Luke 17, one of them, again the Samaritan, when he saw that he was healed, came back praising God, underline the words, loud voice. Hindi ho siya tahimik. Siguro ho yung siyam, if somebody would confront the 9, they would say, of course we're grateful. But being, the feeling of being grateful doesn't count. What counts is when you come back and you actually thank the person, especially Jesus Christ, who healed you. Because this man who went back and he saw that he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. And the words loud voice in verse 15 in Greek means megas and phones, which gives us our English word megaphone. I-announce mo. And kadalasan hindi tayo nagsasalita po, alam mo na yun. Salamat ha. Saan? Alam mo na yun. Because this one took the time to note what happened to him, that he was healed, that he was blessed. And Jesus probably during the time when he was looking for the 9 was baffled because there was no expression of gratitude. And many times when we don't express gratitude, what does it mean? It means ingratitude. There's a reason who we need to be able to say, express ho natin, magpasalamat tayo, say it. Don't just say, I feel it, I know the Lord sees my heart. No, if somebody does something good for you, and probably today, and even tomorrow, ho, and for those who are in San Francisco who will be having dinner after this, you might want to take time to just talk about the people that you are basically thanking God for. Sino yung mga taong yun? You might be able to want to text kung di mo makita ko yung taong yun. At home, your wife, your husband, kasama na ako doon. Our kids, okay, our siblings, our ates and kuyas, our pastors in the church. Ilan nung sa atin puputak na our pastors? And say, maraming salamat, Pastor. Coach, at least sa Dubai o sa Europe. How many of us will take time to acknowledge the people who had helped us along the way? And the reason we are where we are is because there are people who helped us to become successful in life. When we are grateful, when we express it and say it, okay, it means something. And even who the book Gratitude Project would say, you have to be specific. Bakit ka grateful? Bakit ka nagpapasalamat sa akin? You have to tell others why you are thankful, okay, for them. Sa asawa ko siguro, salamat, pinagluluto mo ako. Hindi, no? Sa mga magulang siguro, for the kids, salamat, ma'am, pinagdadrive mo ako. In the book, The Gratitude Project will say, the reason for this is pretty simple when we become specific. It makes the expression of gratitude feel more authentic, for it reveals that the thanker was genuinely paying attention and isn't just going through the motions. Not just stop and acknowledge what happens to us, what the Lord had done to us, what other people had done to us, but to say thank you. Baka magandang simulan natin. Hindi ho sapat ho yung, alam naman niya ang naramdaman ko ang puso ko. Alam naman niya nagpapasalamat sa kanya. No, please. If there's something we can begin doing tonight or today, is to come to those people. Text, call, okay, say it, and express your thanksgiving. Because Jesus made an issue of the 9 lepers who were healed and did not come back. But he highlighted, okay, talked about the one man who went back and say thank you in a loud voice. His thankfulness was put in words. And it was Andy Stanley again in his preaching recently that I watched po, he said, unexpressed gratitude is experienced as ingratitude. Si Andy Stanley pong sabi, unexpressed gratitude is experienced as ingratitude. A pastor, okay, said, another version, unspoken gratitude is ingratitude spoken. Okay ba ho yun? Unspoken gratitude is ingratitude spoken. Because a person who is ungrateful will not say anything. Because ingratitude basically is an absence of words, an absence of recognition of something that we have done. In understated, it is the expression of gratitude, not the emotions, that completes the circle. Hindi yung naramdaman mo, your feelings do not matter. If you do not express it and say it, salamat ate, salamat kuya. Salamat pastor, salamat huddle guide. Salamat volunteers at church every Sunday. Salamat sa worship team. Okay? Salamat sa lahat ng tumutulong. Okay, every Sunday who would volunteer, take time to come early. Yung mga nagbubuhat ho, I mean at least once a year. Kung pwede nga, every Sunday. I mean to be able to approach people and say, maraming salamat sa'yo. It is the expression of gratitude, not the emotions, that completes the circle, that closes the gap, or maintains the connection. I remember St. Paul, whenever he would write a letter to the churches that he was pastoring. Hindi ho takot ho, hindi ho nagwiwulhod ng kanyang emosyon. For example, in Philippians 1, verses 3-5, si Paul, grabe pinadadama niya, sinasabi niya, sinusulat ho niya. When he said in Philippians 1, verses 3-5 to the church of Philippi, you had helped him a lot financially. As a missionary, and this is what he said, I thank my God every time I remember you. I always pray with joy in my every prayer for all of you because of your participation in the gospel from the first day until now. PB, whether Philippines, Australia, or whether here, learn to express and say thanks. Be the most grateful person in your family, in your church, in your community, among your friends, in your school probably, in your office. Because when we are grateful, and for kids to express our thanksgiving to our parents, sabi nga ho nila, nakakaano ho yun, ano ba sa Tagalog yun? It melts their hearts. When we do something, we become spontaneously grateful and thankful, and we express our gratitude to our parents. Sabi ho nila, grabe, the parents are suddenly moved from within. Ganun din pong mag-asawa siguro. To say thank you sa ating pong mga misis, sa ating mga asawa, because again, Andy Stanley said, gratitude is the language of the heart. Kung may isang bagay yung naintindihan ng mga tao sa atin, at lingwahe po ng kanilang mga puso, kung marunong tayong magpasalamat. Express it. Kung tayo sanay at mahiyain ho tayo, gawin na ho na, simulan na ho natin yun. Kaya habang inaaral ko to, pinapractice ko na sarili ko. Okay, nung pinagawa ako ng salad ng asawa ko, normally sanay na kasi ako. Siya naman talaga yung naghahanda pag naandito ako. But sometimes, when I was studying this, and the Lord, someone was talking to me, and sometimes we take them for granted. The people in our families, we take them for granted. Our friends. Hindi ho natin pinasasalamatan. It was Jean, I don't know how you pronounce, Baptiste, Massou, French, famous deaf educator, made a statement that's now considered a French proverb. Gratitude is the memory of the heart. Kung kay Andy Stanley, gratitude is the language of the heart, ito po yung French guy, gratitude is the memory of the heart. It was Alfred Painter who said, saying thank you is more than good manners. It is good spirituality. Friends, PV, make it a habit, a lifestyle, an attitude to say thank you, please express it. Pag wala na ho yung tao, hindi yung nagmamadali ka o bilang doon ka nagsisisi. Yung regrets ho natin because you're not able to say it. Yung pagpatay na ho yung magulang mo, pagpatay na ho yung kapatid mo, I don't want to talk about it, but sometimes it happens. Then the only time we would say salamat because we would regret what we have not done when they're still alive is then when they're dead. That's number 2. Say it, but lastly is to show it. Because again, you go back to Luke chapter 17, verse 16. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan, which means Jesus, when he met the man who went back, this man did not only thank him in a loud voice. He actually knelt down and bowed down before Jesus Christ. He visibly, not only verbally expressed his thanksgiving, he visibly expressed that he was thankful. It was an act of worship. Sabi nga nila, it is one thing to say thanks, but it is another thing to live thankful. To be able to show it. Ito, mabilis lang ho ito. Hindi ko na-expound ho ito. We don't have much time. But si Rick Warren said, if you want to show God, at least sa Diyos ho, hindi na sa ibang tao, that you are thankful and grateful, one of the things you can do is to sing to God. Psalm 147, verse 7, sing out your thanks to Him. Sing praise to our God, accompanied by harps. In Psalm 95, verse 2, let us come before Him with thanksgiving. Sing joyful songs of praise. Kahit sintonado ho tayo. And the Lord would just want to hear us sing. Alam niyo ho, I was teaching this topic also in Dubai. Sabi nga, ang hirap minsan pag online. Unlike when you're on site, the experience of corporate worship, yung naramdaman mo Iba ho pag naandito ko on-site. And the most challenging for us when we join, for example, a service, a gathering, is when wala ho tayong magagawa. We do this, especially Ethos online. But sometimes I wonder if, the worship team would come up here and start leading us with worship. How many of us would take time to actually sing songs before God? Minsan, alam mo, bilang isang pastor, kinakabahan. Ilan kaya sa amin nanonood lang habang kumakanta si Derek at saka si Jonathan at saka si Miriam? How many of us would really sing before God and say, Lord, this is my way of being grateful. I just want to sing you a song. My way of thanking you and being grateful is by singing joyful songs of praise. Even Colossians 3 verse 16 would say, sing psalms, hymns, and sacred songs, singing to God with thanksgiving in your hearts. But second thing was this, give back to God. Because a person who understands that the source of all things is God would always realize the importance of giving back to God. Even neuroscience would talk about that. Imagine the neuroscience would say, other research is also showing that gratitude inspires pro-social behaviors such as generosity, compassion, and charitable giving. None of which suggests passivity or resignation. Instead, it suggests that gratitude motivates people to go out and do things for others, to give back some of the goodness that they recognize receiving themselves. And to be able to recognize that what we have came from God. Hindi dahil masipag ho tayo. Hindi lang dahil maswerte ho tayo because again, we have a God who is the giver of all gifts. The source of all things. It's but right for us to pause for a while and say, Lord, one of the many ways I want to show you that I'm grateful for what you've done is to give back. The psalmist would say in Psalm 54 verse 6, I will offer a sacrifice as a special gift to you. I will thank you, Lord, because you are good. In Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 10 to 11, okay, then celebrate the festival of harvest for the Lord your God. Do this by bringing him some special gift you want to bring. Decide how much to give by thinking about how much the Lord your God has blessed you. You may want to take time to just evaluate your commitment, okay, to God, especially in giving back to God. Baka magandang pagkakataon ho ngayon pong araw na ito to just review, evaluate our giving commitment to God. Because if you are grateful, if you are thankful, the other way of showing your gratitude is to give back. But lastly, is to serve God and others. PB, one of the most profound ways to express your gratitude to God is by serving Him and serving others. In Hebrews 12 verse 28, it says here, since we have a kingdom nothing can destroy, let us please God by serving Him with thankful hearts. The Lord has gifted us with talents. And many times we use our talents to be able to work and provide for our families. Natrabaho tayo, kumikita ho tayo, but how many of us would really take time to use the talents the Lord has given us to serve Him? Because there are many opportunities for us to serve God in the ministry. If you are in the Philippines, in the South and North, Palawan, okay, or in Pampanga ho, or even here, you might want to approach the huddle guys and the pastors and ask, how can I help? How can I serve? Because another way of showing your gratitude is by serving God and others. Tonight as I end, baka napaka-importante siguro ho that we take time. Just pause. Okay? Siguro bago ho tayo mag-dinner ho bukas, if you have an opportunity to gather as a group, as families, as friends, huwag na ho muna tayo magmadaling kumain kaagad. Kahit siguro sa atin sa Pilipinas, so wala namang Thanksgiving, pwedeng Christmas, or a time with your family members to pause for a while and just acknowledge. Hindi ko alam kung sino pinaalala ho ng Diyos sa atin. Volunteers in the church, our parents, our children, our siblings, our friends in the church, our mentors. We need to be able to take time and to pause and to express maraming salamat sa kanila.